When this box came up, the word expression was already visible. Why is that? The reason for that is because previously, as soon as the window was loaded, we started our spin text animation, and at the beginning of the spin text animation, the word expression was not visible because remember that control was flipped around backwards. Now, since I'm not starting that animation, the expression tag is showing towards us, and it's visible immediately. But now you might ask, wait a minute, didn't I hide that in my timeline? We did. However, the eyes and the locks over here in the timeline are only there for design time. So I can use these to hide or display various pieces and to lock various pieces, but when the application actually starts, it won't look here, but it will look at the properties over here in the property inspector instead. So when I minimize my game control, and I scroll down to my viewport, when I unlock it so I can select it and select that element, you'll see that the visibility is in fact visible. So once the application begins, it will show up. So in this case, I want to leave it visible, but I don't want it displaying initially. That's easily enough done. Let me select it, and let me just spin it around again. So I'm actually looking at the back of the element by default. Now remember, since I'm not in any animation mode, any changes that I make are done to the element itself. So let me select this tag, select the rotation. Now what's happening? We're seeing the two-dimensional rotation. Why is that? Whenever you have an element selected, that element's properties are displayed in the Properties Inspector. I've selected my viewport, not the element. So right now I'm seeing the transform controls on the viewport 3D, not on my content model. It's easy to get yourself confused as to what you currently have selected, but take a look always at the left or at the top of the Property Inspector to see what your current selection is if your controls don't seem correct. So let me select my model to do what I actually have been setting out to do. Now I'm going to select my rotation transform. I'm going to change it to 180 degrees so that it's backwards. And now, when I press F5, I get the desired effect. My word is not there, so my user has no idea which word they're going to be making subsets of. And when I start the new game, my word swings into view, and now they can start making modifications to it. Now by default, the element itself has got a material as well as a back material. We already know what the material looks like because we've got it set to that visual brush. We could use the back material the same way. Now I can click the back material here, but unlike other times that we've worked with brushes, we've got this kind of unusual control here. This is the material editor. Remember, when you're working with a 3D element, you're not working with simple brushes, you're actually working with a composition of various brushes, lights, and other elements. Well, the simplest way to get around that is to add a new material, and that will give you a diffuse color, an ambient color, as well as a texture brush. The texture brush is what we use to create the front of the element. Now let me set that, and I can change it to any color I wish. And now I've got the back of my texture. So now press F5. I've got my nice green rectangle, and rotate it. Now we can see we've got a much more dynamic effect. We've got the 3D jumping out at the user, and we can modify that green to whatever we want. If I wanted to, I could use, say, an image brush, which actually sounds like a pretty good idea. So let me go to my Projects panel, and I'm going to add one more file to my project. This one is already in your Lesson 3 folder, and here is a PNG. In this case, canvas.png. Alright, now I've got a canvas. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to add it to my artboard. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to convert it into an image brush. We'll call this Canvas Brush. And now I'm going to get rid of that image now that it's served its purpose. Select my model again. Go back to my Property Inspector. Select the back material. And go to the resource and apply my canvas brush. You can see by doing these steps how I can apply any brush to any portion of my model that I want. But you know, this blue is a bit bright. I'd actually like to change the color a little bit. I can scroll down here, and by using this little arrow, move to other pieces, I can apply a different color to the texture overall. What you can do with a model, you can't necessarily do with a 2D element. So by modifying the diffuse color, I can actually give the overall texture a different tint.